Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. Today we are previewing the Stanley Cup Finals here for the 2024 NHL playoffs. Who will lift Lord Stanley's Cup at the end of this series? We're going to figure that out today. So, let's start off with the two teams. What is the matchup here in the Stanley Cup Finals? So, coming out of the West corner in the Western Conference is the Canadian Edmonton Oilers. This is huge for the Edmonton Oilers. The last time they made it to the Stanley Cup Final, 2006, right, when they played the Carolina Hurricanes. You do the math on that, it's been almost a decade for the Edmonton Oilers, 18 years to be exact. The Oilers are back in the Stanley Cup Final. It's been a long road for the Oilers in the last 18 years, and basically that season 2006 is where everything changed for the Oilers. So this is a bit of a progression. They've come a long way to get back to the Stanley Cup Final. They obviously didn't win the Cup in 2006, but they put together a pretty nice run that year. Hopefully they're looking for a different result this year in the Stanley Cup Final. Their trip to the final was, I think, what most people would consider an easier path. They beat the Los Angeles Kings in 5 games in the first round. And in the second round, they took on the Vancouver Canucks, who, despite winning the Pacific Division, were always kind of seen as an underdog. And of the 4 teams that won their divisions, Vancouver was definitely the least respected of those 4 teams. So they beat them in 7 games, and what was impressive about that series for the Oilers was the fact that they were down 3-2 in that series, and they had to find a way to win a Game 6 at home and a Game 7 in Vancouver, which did almost look like an impossible task at one point. But here they are. They found a way to get into the Stanley Cup. The Western Conference Final taking on Dallas. Dallas, they were my team to win the Cup. So that obviously was a respectable win. So anything that was said about the Oilers having an easy path to the final, that was put to bed in the third round, because the Edmonton Oilers taking on Dallas, that was a legit series. You look at the Dallas Stars road, they had to beat the Colorado Avalanche and the Vegas Golden Knights, some of the most recent Stanley Cup champions. And this is huge for the Oilers to get back to this point. And despite McDavid probably being injured and Stuart Skinner in between the pipes maybe not being at his best, and at points some of the depth not really showing up, this team has found a way. Despite all the things that have not gone well for them so far, things continue to move along for the Oilers despite some of their deficiencies. And that's incredible. And that's really quite an impressive feat. Meanwhile, for the Florida Panthers, their trip has been in a totally different fashion from the Oilers. The first round taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning, obviously their state rivals, beating them in 5 games. So both of these teams finished off their opponent in 5 games in the first round. The second round, they were able to beat the Bruins in 6. And there's another series that, for the most part, the Panthers kind of had control over and almost let Boston creep back in, but they pretty much had their foot on the Bruins' throat most of that series. And then we get to the third round, where the Panthers finally saw some adversity, and kind of like the Canucks saw in the second round against Vancouver, being down 3-2. The Panthers were down 2-1 at one point in this series, and I remember in Game 4 in particular, they were down 1-0, a shorthanded goal by Chris Kreider, and I remember sitting there thinking, Rangers are about to win. They're about to win this series, and they're about to win this game, and things completely changed. Actually, no, that was Game 5, actually. Either way, things looked up for the Florida Panthers, despite maybe not facing the adversity of being down 3-2 in a series like the Oilers. There was a real point where you were like, oh crap, the Rangers are going to win Game 5, and they're going to take a win going down to Florida for Game 6. And that wasn't the case. The Panthers fought back. Bobrovsky not playing his best hockey. I mean, I was really impressed with Bobrovsky through the first 2 rounds, and even in the second round, he looked a little bit, I don't know, there were points where he didn't look like the Bobrovsky we remember, and even in the third round against the Rangers, I wouldn't say he's, obviously he did enough to get the Panthers to win games, but he wasn't out dueling Shesterkin by any means. So what's so interesting about the Stanley Cup Final is both of the goalies. I'm going to say Bobrovsky's played better than Skinner, but Skinner has been so Jekyll and Hyde these playoffs. He's either been incredible and playing really well, or it's like, oh Jesus, like he just gave up 3 goals in the second period, and when you get to this point, you can't really do that. You can't afford that against teams like the Florida Panthers. But there is a way for the Oilers. You know, we've seen Dylan Holloway get on the board a bunch. Zach Hyman, Leon Draisaitl, even Connor McDavid scoring a pretty goal in Game 6 against Dallas. Like, they have found ways, despite not playing their best and guys not being at their best, like the blue line still putting Ceci and Nurse together, Skinner in between the pipes, this team still finds ways to win. And for the Florida Panthers, I think this, you know, I kind of said that in the series against the Panthers and the Rangers, is the team that's going to face adversity, and how do they handle that? And I think the Panthers did a really good job of, despite being down 2-1 in their series, coming back. And you know, for the Oilers, they've already proven they can do that in the second round. And pretty much being the unanimous underdog against Dallas, they've both come to a really good point here where everything's on the table here. And I think when I look at both of these teams, they match up really well against each other. I think the offense, I would give the slight edge to the Panthers because I think that top line has just been so good. And I will say Barkov has had moments where he's getting good opportunities. He's dominating play, but unable to put it in the back of the net. That has to get better. He has to finish more in the Stanley Cup final because we know the guys in Edmonton, they will finish. Sam Reinhart, he had a good series against the Rangers, slowed down from where he was in the first 2 rounds. I expect him to pick it up again. Tarasenko, he scored the series-clinching goal against the Rangers. I know. Karma has a weird way of doing things sometimes. Tarasenko, Reinhart, and Barkov, that is an incredible line, but it's more than that for the Panthers. You look at Lundell, you look at some of the depth, even guys like Eetu Luostarinen or Kevin Stenlund, guys that you don't really think about for the Panthers, but they do play an important role on that team. And for the Oilers, you know, we need to see guys like Evander Kane. You're just waiting for the moment where Evander Kane wakes up. And maybe that's a hit from Tkachuk, or that's a hit from Bennett, or someone like that to just wake him up. I don't know what it's going to take, but Evander Kane, and I hate to even put this much pressure on him, that could be the deciding factor in this series. If he wakes up and gets going and playing and scoring goals and being a pain in the neck, kind of being the I don't want to say Tkachuk, but I want to say more so the level of like a Bennett, like a Sam Bennett. If he can be that type of player to just come in and just be a pain in the ass for the opponent, that's going to be huge. And if they're able to do that, they're able to equalize the grit and the skill and the speed and the fast game that the Panthers play. It's going to be big. And I think the thing for the Oilers they really need to watch for, the most impressive thing I've seen from the Panthers is their ability to break out of their own zone. You know, the Rangers, for the first 2 rounds, saw teams that struggled to get out of their own end. And the Rangers' forecheck was able to put enough pressure, keep the puck deep in their opponent's zone, and force turnovers. Well, for the Panthers, the way the Panthers are, they have so much good chemistry with each other. And even if the puck kind of bobbles along the boards or things like that, the passes are so crisp, and even when they're not, they're able to kick the puck to a guy to get the puck out of the zone. They really prioritize making sure they get the puck out and not having a turnover in their own end. And it is just, if you're an Oilers fan, you're going to notice that against the Panthers. Their ability to get the puck out of the zone is incredible. And for the Oilers, their biggest factor is their transition game is so good. They are so fast coming back the other way. And like I said, the Panthers are going to do their best, kind of like they did to the Rangers, really testing that defense, really putting some pressure on the blue line for the Oilers and trying to keep the puck in their end, forcing them to make mistakes. For the Oilers, got to make sure they're able to do that. And if they can, it's going to be a competitive series. You know, a lot of people are expecting the Panthers to win this series. I would say they are the favorite to win this series. But if we've learned anything from the Oilers, they love to be the underdog. And I think that is probably the better position for them, honestly, if they are to pull off the upset here. With that said, the gap is so close between these two teams. And for me to sit here and say this is going to be an easy sweep for one team or another is ridiculous. Both of these teams have gotten here for a reason. They deserve to get here. And when I come up with who I think is going to win this series, you know, home ice advantage for the Panthers doesn't really matter. Both these teams have played extraordinarily well on the road. They find ways to win on the road, overtime games, just dominance overall. Doesn't really seem to matter in this year's playoffs, and especially for these two teams in particular, doesn't really matter. So, yeah, technically game 1 and 2 and a potential game 7 would be in Florida. But the reality is that doesn't really seem to matter in this year's playoffs. So when I come up with my assessment for really who I think is going to win this series, this is so close. And I'm going to give the respect where it's due to both teams. I'm going to go with this series ending in game 7, and I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers lifting Lord Stanley's Cup. I think the only real difference between these two teams is the experience from teams like the Florida Panthers. Listen, they watched the Vegas Golden Knights lift the Stanley Cup in the building while they were undressing and taking off their pants. Oh, that sounds a little weird. Don't think of it that way. Taking off their socks, right? Taking off the jersey, taking their gloves off, and listening to the Golden Knights celebrating a Stanley Cup victory. Don't think for a second that sting isn't still very fresh for the Florida Panthers. The Oilers are a good team. They have the best player in the entire National Hockey League, and anything can happen. And with the way we've seen Stuart Skinner play this entire year between the playoffs and the regular season, we don't know what version of him we're going to get. And I think I'm more comfortable with knowing the version of Bobrovsky we're going to get, which he might give up a goal or 2 per game, maybe even 3. But he didn't do that enough during the playoffs for me to think that's going to be a normal occurrence. And like I said, I just think the balance of the team and the lack of weaknesses for the Panthers is going to be enough. I'm going to go with the Panthers in 7. But I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Like I said, it's really interesting because we have not seen a Canadian team win a Stanley Cup since 96, right? Or 93. I think it was the Montreal Canadiens that won the last Stanley Cup north of the border. But either way, a really entertaining series is going to start Saturday. Really looking forward to that. I might even do a live stream. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out the community tab. And I'll give you guys updates if I'll be live streaming or not on Saturday. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again next time. Peace out, guys.